What's up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about Snakewood by Adrian Selby. Now, this book came out a couple years ago. I want to say it was 2016. And since then, it's gotten a lot of criticism. A lot of criticism. I've straight up seen this book get beat up in the comments section. I've also seen it highly praised. And, people, within grimdark circles certainly praise the book quite highly. So, it's like this mix and match, though I would say that the people hating on the book definitely outweigh the ones that are praising it. Nonetheless, when I see stuff like that, or when I hear like those kinds of critiques, it definitely just piques my interest. One of the big ones being when I see or hear somebody talking about, oh, the characters are unrelatable, they're not enjoyable, and you can't sympathize with them. Well, that just really intrigues me that much more. Like, I'm into that kind of thing, and that's almost how I can go through comment sections and tell if I'm gonna dig a book, is almost how it gets beat up, because time and time again those critiques I just don't find true for myself, and I don't think that I think some of you out there feel the same way, you know what I mean? So this is one of the main reasons I really wanted to dive into this book, because I want to cut through all the bullshit and make up my own decision like a big boy. So let's get into it. The book is about a group of mercenaries known as Kalen's 20. Now, they're all older, past their prime, over the hill, and they're also being hunted and assassinated. It is a bit mysterious because it's been years and years since Kalen and the 20 rode together, so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense why somebody's seeking their revenge now. But as events play out, we are slowly kind of brought into the fold. We start to understand that there's a lot of sides to this story. The whole thing is told through first-person accounts, letters, field reports, which gives this a very interesting take on storytelling, if you ask me. This is something it's different. That was one thing I noticed about Snakewood almost right out the gate, was, man, this is interesting because this has a different take about storytelling. It kind of reminded me of the Silmarillion, because that's really just one big account. But now Snakewood is much more of a story. It's more straightforward than the Silmarillion. It's not going to make you work that hard. But Snakewood does make you work for the reward. Keeping with this, though, I do believe that this is going to be one of the major things that turns people off from this book. It's a different approach. It's just, especially in the beginning, it can get really confusing because this is a very big world. There's a lot of different factions and people, so it's kind of like it's all getting thrown at you, and it's hard to tell what's important. Should I keep pushing on? Should I reread this till I understand it? It can kind of throw you for some loops. It's not, like I said, it's not so straightforward. You will go from reading somebody's letter to then an account of this, and you might go back and forth kind of a little bit between time as well, because there are some flashbacks in the book as well that kind of let you in on how the 20 were in their prime and now how they are now. Either way, I just know where I fall on this whole thing, and I progressively learned to love this form of storytelling, I guess, more and more as I went. I was definitely a little, overwhelmed at first, but as I got my bearings, I want to say probably took me around 50-60 pages. But once I did, it progressively got better, and I was really blown away with how much I just kept enjoying this book. And I have to just throw out some kudos, because, geez, man, this is definitely like somebody trying to bring you something different and unique, and I see it. I just know that there's going to be a lot of people that don't. One of the coolest things in the book is definitely the fight brews. Now, when you first start reading, you're going to be like, oh yeah, the fight brew. It's kind of like the magic system in this book. It's like potions. They make you stronger, run faster, hear or see better. Different brews do different things. But as you read, you start to understand that it's so much more than that. Like the brews, the poisons, all that stuff comes from plants and compounds that come from this world, and it's all so very important. Like, these compounds are very coveted, and each faction or whatever group, they all have their own people that make up these fight brews and poisons, and they all have their own recipe books. Now, these recipe books are very important because what kind of fight brew recipes you have could really make or break the battle. So you could literally, sometimes a fight could be won without even going to war. Just because the opposite faction knows that you have better recipes in your cookbook, they know that they can't compete with your brew. So it's just like they'll oh, it's so awesome. It's very cool. The plants, the compounds it's really built into the world building. Oh, it's so much fun. This was also really cool because, like, this is one book, like, where caltrops are a thing, but man, like, I was, like, playing D&D, you're always like, oh, I got some caltrops, but you're never going to use them. It's like, but in this book, caltrops get used several times, and I guess I just enjoyed it because it's, like, this booby trap weapon I've known of my whole life, and I've never seen anybody actually use them. Another really cool thing about the fight brews is that they change the skin color of the people that drink them. It's what's called paying the color. So men and women that have paid the color might have a different skin color, like red or blue or green, which is really cool, man. Just being able to tell you could tell this guy's a badass because he's paid the color. Another really cool thing on top of all that is that these fight brews are addictive and they're also destructive. So yes, they're helping these men and women fight and win these wars, but they're also tearing them apart from the inside out, and we really get to see the the aftermath of all this fight brew addiction, especially in the 20. You know what I mean? Because like this is when they're all over the hill, they're well past their prime, and they're definitely feeling the wrath of paying the color. Next, I want to talk about the characters. Now, this is what's funny because, like I said earlier, this is one of the things that drove me towards the book because of the criticisms about the characters just not being likable. You can't sympathize with them and all that. And after reading the book, I would say that's just poppycock. There's absolutely bullshit, man. Like, there was some amazing characters in this book. I would say especially what surprised me the most, because this is supposed to be one of those grimdark books, man, the female characters I felt were handled really well in this book. Probably the best amongst like any grimdark book I read. Also, guys, I don't know if this is really a grimdark book, but we'll get into that. Anyway, there was at least 3 female characters that were extremely well handled, in my opinion. Marshall Lawn being one. She's like a military commander, kind of, so to speak. And she's, you know what I mean, she's not afraid to speak up when she knows better. It's just very capable women in this world, which is something it really poked out to me because, like I said, I read a lot within the genre, and a lot of the times the grimdark gets accused of just not being able to like portray women right, and I would say that like in this book, this is probably some of the best it's done. The other characters in the book, like Kalen, the leader of the 20, this is a guy who came up in a like very prestigious military war like academy, and he was an award-winning student. He could have went on and led some kind of very, very high-ranking like position in some army somewhere for some noble, but he said fuck that, man. He's very smart, he's very intelligent, and it plays through well throughout the story. This was one thing, like, because of these perspective changes, when you get to like Kalen, like the prose is very beautifully written, so like you can almost then understand that this is a smart man just because of the way that he writes and relays information. Man, just an impressive character. And I don't understand like where people are like, oh, I can't sympathize with him or whatever. Kalen definitely has a situation in this story, one involving his wife, and it's like, man, if you can't sympathize with him about that, then I don't know what you know what I mean? You're messed up, dude. And as far as enjoyable characters, there's 2 members of the 20 in this that I enjoyed a lot of the characters, but I'm just trying to nail down some like of the worst guys in here just so I can kind of smash these critiques a little bit. Gant and Shale are in here. They're 2 members of the 20. They're definitely knuckle-dragging, dirtbag mercenaries. You know what I mean? And I felt like everybody played their part realistically throughout this book. Like, this is a very serious book. There's not a lot of humor, and there's really no humor. And I just, like, a lot of people might be thinking, oh, they're so brutal. I just feel it was realistic for the situation that they're in and the kind of people that they are. You know what I mean? Like, mercenaries are probably not that nice of people, guys. The problem is that we get all these fantasy books where we turn these savages into nice guys, and then we start to like see them through that lens. No, Mercenaries kill people for fucking money. You know what I mean? These are bloody men when you boil it all down. But still, hey, I found a way to enjoy them. And not just because, oh, they're, those dark and disturbing types. There's a moment between those two where I'm not even shitting you guys. I, teared up. Because of just, you start to understand their relationship, and because of, just how serious of a story this is, it was very heartfelt, and it just super caught me off guard because I was not expecting to have that kind of emotion while reading the story. And it's not because I'm so emotionally invested in the characters, it's because the writing was done and it was a very touching moment between the two. Which this is going to bring me to the tone, which is also one of the biggest gripes I have with the criticisms of the book, because this is just kind of heralded as this dark book. Too dark for some. Even if you like grimdark, this might be too dark. And I think that is just silly and ridiculous, because after reading this, I'm like, I kept waiting for this super dark moment to happen the further I got through the book, because I'm like, oh, well, it hasn't really been that dark. Ooh, maybe something big dark's gonna happen. Well, not really, guys. I don't understand why this is really heralded as this crazy dark grimdark book and not just an adult low fantasy tale, because that's really what it felt like to me. I'm starting to wonder who's making these criticisms. Are they fucking 13-year-olds? Because if this book is too dark, man, I'm afraid to recommend anything to you. There are some dark things in the book, trust me. There is rape in the book of both men and women, and it's not exactly just glossed over. There's a little bit to it. I wouldn't say it's super fucking graphic, but it's there. I don't think it's very arbitrary, though. I think it has a lot to do with the revenge tale. So I don't think it's just rape for rape's sake or whatever that would make it seem darker. I'm trying to figure out where else the addiction from the fight brews. That's actually a pretty dark, disturbing thing. This is a big world with a lot of borders and everybody's at war, it seems. That's kind of a grimdark aspect. When it all boils down to it, guys, grimdark is what you decide. It's really what the reader decides it is. I just tend to look at it on the darker side of things. So I was really, really shocked when I read this book, and it just didn't seem that dark to me. This is not something I would warn somebody hey, well, it's really, really dark, though. No. There is no character in here that's, you know what I mean, the Northmen from First Law, or the Road Brothers from the Broken Empire, or any character from the Manifest Illusions series. All those contain so much darker characters and content than this one. I'm not sure why it's keeps getting this dark reputation. All in all, I love the book, man. I literally, as I progressed through the book, it grew on me more and more. When I first started, I was literally going, man, is this a 3-star book or is it a 4-star book? Because there's just so many interesting things about the book that maybe you're not as entertained, but you understand it for what it is, and it kind of makes it even shinier. I don't know if that makes sense. But as I progressed through the book, it went from being is this a 3 or a 4-star to is this a 4 or a 5? I really enjoyed this book for what it was. It was a great breath of fresh air because it is original. It is just ambitious as hell. This is a huge world. And I do feel the story that takes place in this book, it's kind of like having this tiny little story in this huge world, but Selby does take you all over the place, and we'll have flashbacks and whatnot. He has an interesting take on world building. I just really enjoyed this, I guess, for what it was, but I can see where there's going to be, a lot of hangups and headaches for other people. So my 2 cents for the slow and the struggling reader, I would just probably deter you from getting into this one just because it would be difficult to get into if you're struggling, man. It's just, even for me, and I'm really into reading right now, so it's it was tough to push through that first bit because it is a little overwhelming. You're getting the story coming at you from these reports and accounts and whatnot, and yes, they're in the first person, but the change in perspectives and Even the prose is written different. When you switch characters, the writing style changes with them. So that can even trip you up. There's just so much. This has a huge scope. Huge scope. I'm really interested in digging into this world, but like I said, this could be so overwhelming for a struggling reader. I would just say pump the brakes, get a little bit of experience under your belt before tackling something like this. But also, when you do, just give it a chance. Don't just bail because it's not like everything else you read. You know what I mean? This is a cool story that's going to make you work for that reward. Now, as far as the slow readers, man, I can't really just recommend this for everybody, because it's not for everybody. If you're interested in something that might have like a different approach, that has a lot of realistic qualities to it, that, you know what I mean, where the action, a lot of it is about strategies and battle planning, there is great action in this book, especially the further you get into it, but there's a lot that's glossed over too. It kind of reminded me of some of how the Black Company goes about doing it. Yeah, like I said, slow readers, this is going to be worth your time if you want to try something different. And it is dark. I know I'm like making it sound like it's not that dark, but it is a darker tale, but to me it's much more low adult fantasy. If you're looking at something that, like, you're really into military fantasy and you like strategies and crazy world building, revenge tales, there's a good chance that you will like this book. But there's also that chance that you might not. It's just a different style of story, which makes it kind of frustrating as a reviewer, because I would love for people to read this. I think it's, like I said earlier, I think it's very ambitious. And I would just love for people to read it and give it a chance and really, make up their own minds about this book instead of listening to all that criticism out there, because I disagree with the majority of it, guys. Now, as always, thanks for spending some time down here at the channel. And to Adrian Selby, boom, boom, 2 thumbs up, man. I want to say 1 thumbs up just because I thought this was a cool, interesting story, but another one just for being ambitious enough to write something like this. And I am super excited to get into the future works. I know Red Brother is coming out in January. The Winter Road is already out, which I believe is a prequel. I think all of these books are standalone stories, essentially, that take place in the same world. I'm going back in. That's for sure. And I'm excited about it. Like I said, it's cool that I started this kind of lukewarm and ended like on such a high note. I'm very excited, and it's cool, man. I'm into reading again, almost, in a way, because because it's so different. I don't know. Read the book, make up your own decision. All right. Thanks, guys. If you're new, please like and subscribe. As always, peace.